He's not trying to save the world. He doesn't want to be the strongest. He's not fighting for honor, for justice, or even revenge. Denji's not out there chasing justice or vengeance like the typical hero. All he wants, honestly, is something painfully simple. He wants to touch a girl. He wants to eat good food, sleep in a warm bed, maybe watch some trash TV on a beat-up couch. That's it. That's his dream. But buried inside that simplicity is something much deeper, something raw, aching, and very, very human. In a world overflowing with devils, monsters, and supernatural horrors, Denji is something worse. He's real. He bleeds for money. He fights because he has no other option. And when he finally gets a taste of what he's always longed for, comfort, care, connection, he finds that the price of it is higher than blood. So what does that make him? A hero? A fool? A survivor? Or something far more complicated? This is the story of a boy shattered by circumstance. A boy shaped by hunger, by loneliness, by manipulation. A soul twisted not by malice, but by need. He was built to obey, lied to at every turn, raised without ever being taught what love, trust, or freedom even look like. And now we're left asking the real question, one that's not so easy to answer. Is Denji simply a product of a brutal, broken world, or is he responsible for what he's becoming? This is Denji's dark journey. And in the end, we're left with just one question echoing through the blood and silence. Is he a victim or a villain? To understand Denji's darkness, we have to go back to when he was just a child and the world had already decided he wasn't worth saving. He never had a real childhood. Denji was born into debt, a crushing weight left behind by a father who hung himself and a mother we never even meet. From the very start, he was stuck in survival mode. Selling organs, cutting wood, living on scraps. No one offered help. No one even looked his way. He wasn't metaphorically a stray dog. He was one, sleeping in dirt, eating cigarette butts, wondering if he'd even survive the next day. And then he met Pochita, a devil, yes, but also the only being who ever gave Denji something close to real love. Not for what he could do, not for what he could give, just love. Pochita wasn't just a pet. He was a friend, a quiet promise in a cruel world. If I die, you can take my body, Denji said. If I die, you can live. Even then, at rock bottom, Denji was willing to give someone else a better life. But that peace didn't last. The world took his only friend and turned him into a weapon. Denji became Chainsaw Man, and that's when the manipulation started. Makima entered the picture, sweet-talking him, feeding him, wrapping him in something soft and warm and deadly. She offered him food, a bath, a bed, the hope of love, but it was all a leash. She didn't see Denji as a person, just a dog, a tool, a weapon to be polished and pointed. And Denji? He didn't know any better. How could he? He'd never been loved, never been free. So when someone finally showed him attention, he mistook it for care. When someone gave him orders, he thought that was affection. He was never taught how to say no. Every time he reached for something human, it was taken away or turned into a punishment. He wanted to kiss someone, he was kissed and thrown up on. He wanted friends, they lied to him. He wanted love, it was just another trick to make him obey. Every dream he chased turned to ash, and still, he kept going. Because Denji doesn't even know what he's allowed to want. That's the tragedy. It's not that he's dumb, not that he's weak, it's that he was never given the chance to be anything else. The world failed him. Everyone around him failed him. And when someone is used for too long, they stop being a person. They become something else. Something shaped by trauma, molded by pain, held together with desperation. That's the Denji we see. Not a villain, not a hero, just a kid who wanted a sandwich and ended up a symbol. And the worst part? He still thinks it's all his fault. There comes a point where pain doesn't break you anymore. It hardens you. It crawls in and builds a shell, layer by layer, until nothing gets in. Not joy, not guilt, not even fear. Denji survives Makima. He survives heartbreak. He survives losing everything he thought was real. The closest thing to family, to love, to purpose. But survival for him isn't noble. It's quiet, dull, empty, and it comes at a price, because after a while, Denji just stops feeling. He stops thinking, stops questioning why things happen. He just keeps moving, like a machine, like a weapon, like a chainsaw. At first, Chainsaw Man was a name, a title, a transformation, a deal made in desperation. Now, it's all he has left. The only version of him the world respects. The only version people want. They cheer for him. They chant his name like he's a savior. But it's never about him. Not Denji, not the kid underneath. It's about the blood, the violence, the fantasy, the legend. And Denji, he plays along because he doesn't know what else to be. He lets the world shape him into something unrecognizable, something brutal, something safe. Because being human, that never worked out for him. The boy who once just wanted jam on his toast now slaughters devils in public for attention, for purpose, for noise to drown out the silence in his chest. There's something hollow inside him now. Space where trust, love, and hope should have been. And he's desperate to fill it with anything: blood, applause, flesh, fame, anything but stillness, even power. The one chaotic, unfiltered soul who might have seen the real him. Even Aki, the reluctant brother who taught him the meaning of home in the smallest ways, dead. Makima crushed every last piece of his heart, not with violence, but with something worse: love twisted into control. And when she was done, he didn't cry. He obeyed. He submitted. He disappeared into the role she gave him. Until he didn't, because Denji doesn't kill Makima in rage. It's not justice, not a dramatic rebellion. He murders her quietly, calmly, almost like he's feeding a stray. He cuts her, cooks her, eats her, not for revenge, not to feel powerful, but because in some twisted place inside him he thought, maybe this way she'll never leave me. Maybe if she becomes part of him, truly physically part of him, the pain will stop. But that's not love. That's not healing. That's possession. That's obsession. That's the logic of a broken soul that never learned to be held without being leashed. And that's when Denji begins to drift into something darker. Not villainous, not evil, but something unanchored. Something fragile in a dangerous way. He stops understanding the weight of what he does. Not because he wants to hurt, but because the hurt never stopped in him. The boundaries blur. He's not cruel, he's not heartless, but he's becoming numb, detached. And that's terrifying. Not to the world, to him, because Denji isn't addicted to violence. He's addicted to movement, to distraction, to not being alone with what's left inside. Chainsaw Man becomes a mask, a safety net, a wall between himself and feeling. He hides behind blood, behind fame, behind screams that drown out the quiet. Because if he ever stops moving, if he ever stands still, he'll have to look in the mirror. And what he sees there, he might not recognize it. And that scares him more than any devil ever could. So is Denji a villain? Not in the way stories define them. He's not scheming. He's not trying to control others. He's not chasing power for power's sake. But he is doing damage to himself, to the people who reach for him, to what fragile slivers of humanity he has left. He was forged in tragedy, shaped by violence, molded by a world that never asked what he wanted, only what he could give, only what he could endure. And when something used as a tool starts acting on its own, people call it dangerous. So yes, Denji was a victim, but now he's something else entirely. Not evil, not righteous, not broken in a way you can clearly see, just lost. And maybe that's the scariest transformation of all. After everything he's been through, you'd think Denji would finally get some peace. He's not on the run. He's not fighting for scraps anymore. He's not bleeding out in some alley for a few yen. Technically, he's free. But the strange thing is, freedom isn't what he thought it would be. Life is quiet now, slower. He goes to school, he buys groceries, he takes care of Nayuta. It's the normal life he used to fantasize about. But something feels wrong. It's like he's watching himself live instead of actually living. The motions are all there: eat, sleep, laugh, walk the dog, clean the floor, but there's a weird hollowness in all of it. Like he's waiting for something to crash into him again, waiting for the chaos to return. Because that's the only time he ever felt like he mattered. He used to believe that being ordinary would fix everything, that if he could just stop fighting, maybe he'd finally feel full. But normal doesn't fill the void, it just hides it better. That itch, that restlessness, it doesn't go away. He can't even sit still without thinking too much about the people he's lost, about what he's done, about who he even is now that he's not being used. And that's the thing. Denji spent so long being told what to do, how to act, what to kill, that now when nobody's telling him anything, he feels more lost than ever. The silence that once felt like a goal now feels like a threat. It forces him to sit with all the pieces of himself that never got sorted out. The grief, the guilt, the craving to feel seen. Even with Nayuta around, he doesn't feel fully present. He cares about her. He wants to protect her. He really does try. But how do you protect someone when you're still trying to figure out what safety even means? How do you give love when you're still unsure if you've ever actually received it? Denji's not spiraling. He's functioning. He jokes. He eats with friends. He walks through life without drawing attention to the storm inside him. But that storm's still there. He dreams of being Chainsaw Man again. Not out of duty, but because at least that version of him was wanted. He was loud. He was feared. He was admired. Denji on his own is just there. That feeling eats at him. The idea that maybe without the chainsaws, without the spectacle, there's nothing special left. That maybe people only cared when he was bleeding for them. And when you're raised on that kind of attention, it's hard to believe in anything else. He's not evil, and he's definitely not some shining example of heroism. He's stuck somewhere in between, quietly unraveling while the world assumes he's fine. Because how do you explain that being safe feels scarier than being in danger? He's trying to hold it together for Nayuta, for himself. But the truth is, part of him is still frozen in time, still waiting outside Makima's door, still hoping someone will give him purpose, even if it hurts. And that's what makes this part of his story so fragile. Not the devil fights, not the blood, but the empty space where purpose used to live. Where does someone like Denji go from here? He doesn't even know, and that might be the scariest part of all. Denji's story doesn't end with some epic battle or a grand goodbye. It just keeps going, quietly. And maybe that's what makes it harder. He isn't running anymore, he's not being hunted, controlled, or broken. But instead of relief, he's left with something else, stillness. And for someone like Denji, stillness doesn't feel safe. It feels unfamiliar. He's got a roof over his head, a warm meal in the morning, and a little girl to look after. By all accounts, this is the life he once dreamed of. But living it feels strange. He's not suffering, but he's not exactly living either. He walks through his days like he's watching someone else play the part. Wake up, feed Nayuta, smile when people expect him to, laugh when it seems right. But underneath it all, there's a quiet tension, like something inside him never quite settled. He wants to do right by Nayuta. He wants to be a good brother, a steady presence, someone she can count on. But that kind of love, the quiet, patient kind, doesn't come naturally to someone who's only ever known affection through control or chaos. He's trying, and that effort matters, but some days he still wonders if he's just pretending to be someone who's okay. He misses being needed, not the danger, not the blood or fear, but the clarity. Back then, people wanted something from him. Now in the quiet, he's left with questions that don't have answers. Who is he when there's no one watching? What's left when survival isn't the goal anymore? Denji's not evil, he's not heroic either. He's somewhere in between, carrying guilt, loss, and hope in equal parts. And even if he doesn't say it, even if he doesn't always show it, he's still trying to love better, trying to live better, one small choice at a time. And maybe that's enough, because sometimes the most powerful thing a person can do isn't fighting for the world. It's choosing to stay in it. That's all for now. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Until next time, I'll see you soon.